history nerds and historians. My name is Christina, and this is Effed Mythology. This is where we talk about lots of mythology that's super fucked up, but honestly, what mythology isn't? Am I right? Hey, hi, it's me, your favorite unreliable podcaster that you all know and tolerate. I would say love, like know and love, but it's also been like 5 months since I posted, so some of you might not be too happy with me. Sorry about that. So in my defense, I have tried. I did start like 3 or 4 episodes that will still be coming out at some point, but of course, like, I had to pick topics that required a lot of research and nuance, and finding time has been a little harder now that I'm like living the dream. So they've been temporarily banished to the mythical holding bag that is my Google Drive folder. One of the reasons why I've been gone is because from my last episode in April, that was the collab episode with me and Rainy Day Rabbit Hole's podcast about like the evolution of Satan, which if you haven't listened to, it's a really fun episode. I really enjoyed making it. But from like the end of that to the end of May, I was spending all of my free time researching and writing for this huge talk that I did at Hammond Castle in Gloucester. So for any of you who don't know, Hammond Castle is like a literal medieval style castle. It was built in the 1920s, but it was by this guy who was obsessed with like the medieval time period and had millions of dollars worth of medieval artifacts. And I got to give an hour-long talk about counter magic. And then afterwards, some of the people who worked there were like, hey, we actually have some of those marks that you were talking about in your presentation. We actually have them like randomly on doors and fireplaces and stuff. Like, let us go take you to a behind the scenes tour so you can see these things. And it was honestly like one of the coolest experiences of my life thus far. But regardless, I tried to record that talk twice for you all to listen to. And the first time around, it was after my kid went to sleep and I was trying to do like an ASMR moment. But like, I just sounded really bored and I didn't like it. So I don't think that ASMR is my thing. And then when I tried again, I realized that it might be better with visuals. So I gave up on that halfway through. I have started importing some of my episodes to YouTube. I did that earlier, or I guess like not this month because it's the beginning of September. I did that last month, and I have to now go through the process of like censoring my videos over there so that way they don't get demonetized when I eventually can monetize on YouTube. So if you are a YouTube listener, you can go listen to me on there, and then as I like fix up the videos and start uploading new ones, I'll probably start including more visuals in that. And also the real reason why I've wanted to move over there is because it's more friendly to people who may have a disability where they're hard of hearing or anything like that, or where they need the subtitles to better understand everything. So by being over there on YouTube, I do now have the opportunity to offer that as a service, which I'm really excited about because I'm a subtitle bitch through and through. And then also, it's been a wild time. And then also, at like literally 2 days before I did that talk at Hammond Castle, I also graduated. I matriculated. I actually graduated last year, but I matriculated. I walked across the stage. I did the whole thing, which was like a whole like, you know, hubbub and ballyhoo. My new job has also taken up a lot of time. My job is really important. We're like opening up a new exhibit and it's amazing and it's really cool and I'm really enjoying all of it. But like my side of it, this is where like all of my work has to be done. And it was really weighing on me a lot and I was spending a lot of time thinking about it. It was also really hard to record during the summer when my son was home, and now that I am working, it was nice to spend time with him when he was off. I also kind of started writing a book. It's been a wild time, but my son is back at school. And so now I have time. He actually started school today when I'm recording. Also, about the book thing, like I'm not going to fully explain the book thing at the moment, but it is a mythology retelling. And if you listen to this podcast for a while, I've mentioned it's something that I want to do. So we'll see if that actually happens. But I'm in like the planning and all of that aspect of it, and the research aspect of it a lot too, because the myth that I want to retell has a lot of factors that go into it. But while I've been in this mythology mindset, I've really missed doing these silly mythology rants. And my dear Bartholomew, I think the time has come for me to talk about my arch nemesis. Now, if you're a longtime listener of this podcast, you will know that while I dislike a lot of mythological characters, including but not limited to Zeus, Odysseus, Agamemnon, Jason, Creon, Hephaestus, Fjallir and Galler, Thrym, and at times Loki, and the list goes on, nothing compares to my sheer hatred and vitriol and loathing that I have for Theseus. It is astounding that there are people in the world who like Theseus. Bob Ross would consider him a mistake. Everyone who has ever loved him is wrong. And to clarify, I do want to say, like, it's not that I hate Theseus necessarily. It's just that if he was on fire right next to me and I had a glass of water, I would water my plants with it. Theseus is the human embodiment of period cramps while also somehow being the human embodiment of wet toast. You know, every time I think about Theseus, I remember to take out the trash. Oh, wait, hold on, I'll be right back. I'd give him a high five. But who knows what kind of diseases I would catch. Plus, I don't think he'd know what to do with it. He would struggle to pour water out of a boot with the instructions written on the heel. He would climb a glass wall just to see what's on the other side. The porch light's on, but no one's home. You know what I mean? But it's okay, because the gods did not intend for everyone to be smart. Bless his heart. He's as useful as the UE in Q. He's as useful as a screen door on a submarine 3 miles deep in the Atlantic Ocean. He's as useful as an inflatable dartboard. He is as useful as a knitted condom. He is proof that the universe truly has a sense of humor and that natural selection doesn't actually exist despite my strong beliefs in science. And to clarify, in saying all of this, I am not insulting him, okay? I am just describing him. I honestly envy the people who have never heard of him, and I am sincerely apologizing in advance to those same people for exposing you to the filth that is Theseus. And I just hope that one day you can forgive me for this. I will say, in true Christina Effed Up History fashion, I will be making this retelling as convoluted as possible and will include many stories because Theseus just has to get his little dirty and probably sticky hands involved in everything. So this is going to be a multi-part episode because I need to take breaks in the middle of it because I can't talk about him much in one sitting. It's not good for my mental health. But at the end, once I publish all the episodes, I will publish like them all together as well. But unfortunately, that's enough procrastinating for me. We should get to it. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and practice your oh good God, what the fuck faces. And I am so sorry. Trigger warning, death, murder, attempted murder, death of a child, abandonment, abuse, bestiality, cannibalism, etc., 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 because this one is a doozy. So Theseus is the son of a man named Aegeus. Aegeus was married to a woman named Melody, and then later to a woman named Chalciope, I think is how you pronounce it. And neither of them were able to get pregnant. And remember, this is mythology. So having an heir is like the most important thing outside of disrespecting women. Very Henry VIII of all of them. And Aegeus thinks that this, along with the misfortunes of his sisters, is because Aphrodite is mad at him for disrespecting her. The misfortunes of his sisters, by the way, to go on a tangent already, is because his sister's Philomela was raped by his other sister Procne's husband named Tereus. And not only was she raped, but he also like cut out her tongue so that she couldn't tell anyone what happened. But he forgot that she could use her hands to convey messages. So she creates this like intricate tapestry. I'm assuming that she couldn't read or write because she was a woman during this time. Women typically were not educated. Most men, except for like wealthy sons, were not educated either. So she like weaves this really intricate tapestry that tells the entire story of what happened to her and sends it to Procne. And when Procne sees this, she comes and rescues Philomela. She then murders her 2 children with Tereus and cooks them and feeds them to Tereus. And then they're turned into birds. And that's the end of that myth. I will say that while writing this script, I immediately turned on the 1999 movie Titus, starring Anthony Hopkins and like one of my big lady crushes, Jessica Lange, which is based on one of like Shakespeare's first plays, Titus Andronicus, in which a character is raped. And they talk about the play Philomela, and so they make sure like a character in the play can't write or make a tapestry. It's horrific, but amazing. It's almost impossible to find. Someone stole my DVD copy of it like years ago, but I did find it on YouTube. So I'll drop the link in the description if you want it. But, you know, just a reminder that oftentimes Shakespeare is actually like historical fiction and heavily inspired by myths of the past. So I just get to be Shakespeare like every day when I do this podcast, apparently. I'm sorry, I'll take any excuse for me to talk about Shakespeare. I will not apologize for that. I will take any excuse to talk about Shakespeare. I love him. So you're welcome. Also, do you want to see baby Jonathan Rhys-Meyers have a 10-minute dance break in the middle of a movie about death and revenge and Jessica Lange in a breastplate that has nipples? And arguably the first Yo Mama joke in history, because I will never pass up an opportunity to see that. You're welcome. It's Titus Andronicus. The link is in the description. Anyway, back to Aegeus. Before I make us any more uncomfortable in this. So Aegeus decides to introduce worship of Aphrodite into Athens, which has historically worshipped Athena, as the name suggests. After this, he goes to the oracle because he has a death wish, and she tells him not to untie the mouth of this bulging wineskin until it reaches the highest point of Athens, lest he one day die of grief. And Aegeus is like, cool. I have no idea what that means. And then he goes home. On his way home, he stops by Corinth and runs into my girl Medea right before she does what she does to take revenge on her husband, Jason. And she's like, hey, you know, if anything were to happen to me, or like if I might do anything that would result in me needing a refuge somewhere, it would be really nice if that somewhere was with you. And he swears a solemn oath that it will be done. And she's like, hey, in thanks for that, I will make sure that you have a son by magic. He then goes to Troezen, where he meets a woman named Ethra. She married Bellerophon, which I don't think I've talked about really before, except maybe briefly in passing. He's the guy who, like, I think he was the guy who rode the Pegasus. But before the marriage could be consummated, he either murdered someone or was accused of murdering someone, and he was banished. And Ethra is really upset that she's not going to be able to make the beast with 2 backs. Sorry, that was another Shakespeare reference. I'll stop. So Aegeus in Troezen meets Ethra, and Ethra wants to bang literally anyone. The entire area is under the effect of Medea's love spell that she puts forth, so that he will conceive a son. And I mean, he conceives a son. At least he thinks he conceives a son, because after they're finished doing what they're doing, Ethra has a dream sent by Athena. And when she wakes up, she goes to the water and wades across to the island of Spheria, where Poseidon rapes her with Athena's knowledge, which leads to Ethra establishing a temple dedicated to Athena, who is like Poseidon's biggest enemy. Like, they have so many feuds, it's ridiculous. But because he does that, it ends up like working out in Athena's favor. So we just love the gods orchestrating stuff like that to get what they want. No bad people, no bad gods at all. They're just wonderful, beautiful, deities that care about us so much. So the next morning when Aegeus realizes that they fucked under a love spell, he tells Ethra that if a son is born to them, which probably will be, she has to raise it. And she can't expose him to the elements or abandon him or anything like that. But she has to keep it quiet that she has a son, because he has like 50 nephews that will try and kill her for some reason. He didn't mention what would happen if it was a girl, because I think we all know what's going unsaid there. But I do want to clarify, he has no intention of like helping raise this child. There's no child support or anything like that. Like, he's about to go fuck off again to Athens. Actually, there's a festival going on like really soon that he's got to go to. So he's gonna go immediately to Athens. So he's dining and dashing, if you get what I mean. But first he takes his sword and his sandals and he hides them under a rock known as the altar of strong Zeus. And he tells Ethra that if she has a son when he's, say, 16, if he can move this rock and retrieve the sandals and the sword, then she should send him to Athens, because it'll prove that this kid that had like no influence by Aegeus at all, who had no hand in raising him, would actually be useful to him. And then he will be acknowledged as his son. I think it's supposed to be this sword that would lead to his like 50 nephews coming after her, because it's an heirloom from like Cecrops, who was super important king and also Aegeus' grandfather, but I'm not entirely sure. But it just so happens that 9 months later, Ethra gives birth to a boy. It's like someone put a love spell over the land to make it happen or something. It's so weird. So everyone is told that he is actually the son of Poseidon, which actually isn't a lie at all. But Poseidon graciously allows Aegeus to claim the parentage. And Theseus is raised mostly by Ethra's father, Pythias. One day, Heracles, who is actually Theseus's cousin, which is so wild to think of just how many half-brothers and cousins were amongst these heroes, and how we don't have many stories of incest-related issues amongst these people of Greece and Rome. So anyway, Heracles is hanging out with Pythias, and he removes his lion skin cloak and like throws it over a stool, and all the children who see it run away screaming, except for Theseus, who was about 7 years old at the time and not like other girls. And he picks up an axe to fight this lion that he hears in the palace. And everyone is like super impressed. And they're like, oh, wow, he will go far in life. And you know what? I agree. And I think he should do so immediately. Perhaps off a cliff would be nice. Save us the headache of the rest of this episode. I don't think I've ever hated someone so much in my life. Now, at some point in his childhood, he goes and trains with Chiron the centaur, who is like the hero maker, right? Like Jason trained with him, Heracles trained with him, Achilles trained with him. Most myths say that they would go at a relatively young age, around 7 to 10 years old, and stay with him for a couple of years, learning how to fight and hunt and sometimes heal. So I'm assuming it was after the lion pelt incidents, because they were like, oh my God, he's just so brave. But we don't really have like any details about this time in any myths. It's sort of just mentioned in passing when it is mentioned at all. At the age of 16, he's grown big and oh so strong, and now that he's officially a man and a hero, he goes to Delphi to offer the first of his manly hair clippings to Apollo. He shaves his head, but only the very front part of his head, which sounds like he looks fucking ridiculous, which is so very fitting for Theseus. Like, not a cool, like, undercut vibe, right? Like, right down the center of the front of his head, like when the Grinch shaved just the center of the mayor's head in How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Like, I want you to imagine the rest of this story as a guy with long hair with the front shave. He has a skullet. He looks like fucking Riff Raff. He's jumping to the left and stepping to the right and ruining lives while looking like the fucking Crypt Keeper. I didn't know this is how he looks. He looks ridiculous. This bozo the clown looking motherfucker has the audacity to look like this and do the stuff that he does. Like, I can't. Apparently, according to Robert Graves, it's supposed to be like a smart hairstyle to show how cunning he is, because in close combat with his enemies, they won't have the advantage over him. But it's literally the most ridiculous thing. Okay. All right. All right. All right. I'm good. I'm good. Okay. When he gets back to Trozen, Ethra, his mother, decides it's time, right? So she takes Theseus and his haircut to the rock. And of course, he has no issue moving it. And this rock is now no longer known as the Stone of Strong Zeus, but it's now known as the Rock of Theseus. And like Aphrodite ruined so many lives because people were simply called beautiful and she finds that offensive. If only Zeus would have seen this as a slight and struck him down. But alas, the gods are not kind. Under the rock formerly known as the Stone of Strong Zeus, he finds the sandals and the sword of his not father under it and decides that he needs to go meet his not daddy. Like, here's what I need to know. Like, does he know that Aegeus is not his actual father or not? Because I'm really confused. Robert Graves tries to explain it, and it basically boils down to, like, which one is more convenient at the moment? Like, to eventually be king of Athens, spoiler, unfortunately, he has to be Athenian, which means he's Aegeus' son, right? So he would say, like, he was Aegeus' son, but when he needed to brag or, like, force some connection to Heracles for clout, or like question someone's ability as king because he is also like son of a god, now he's going to say he's a son of Poseidon. So it's like, which one is it? Like, you make up your mind. Are you the son of Aegeus or are you the son of Poseidon? Because to me, in reading this myth and seeing how much he flip-flops in between, it's like he's a liar and an opportunist in addition to a clout chaser, which just like more reasons to dislike Theseus, if you will. So he grabs the sword and he puts on the sandals and he makes his way off with his haircut and hears from people who, because like, you know, he's a kid still. He's 16 years old. He hasn't traveled much in his life. And everyone's telling him like, hey, dude, the best way to get to Athens is actually by boat. It's actually really dangerous to go by foot to Athens. And Theseus is like, did you say danger? I have delusions of adequacy. And he decides to go by land, like his sometimes cousin Heracles would have done. Now, this road to Athens is like, because it's so dangerous because it's riddled with like bandits and thieves and murderers. And Theseus just wants to murder, but in like the Dexter Morgan way, you know, like he wants to murder people as that are also bad guys, right? And like if you kill and become a serial killer to like a bunch of bad guys, like, are you a bad guy at the end of the day? I mean, I still think yes, but maybe it's okay for Theseus to not have this. And like Robert Graves wants us to know, he wasn't going there to start fights, but if a fight happened to find him on the road where fights are known to happen, and the road that people tend to avoid because of the people who are on these roads that like to pick fights and murder and thieve and rape and pillage, well then like who are we to stop Theseus, right? Like, I mean, it's just self-defense at that point, right? And wouldn't you know, he immediately comes across a man named Periphetes, who some say is the son of Hephaestus, and others say is the son of Poseidon. So either way, it's his cousin or his brother, sometimes, if the moon is right. Now, Periphetes has the nickname Coronites, I think is how you pronounce it, Coronites, which means cudgel man, because his chosen method of murder is to clobber people with a brass club, which Theseus just takes from him and then clobbers him to death with a brass club. And then is like, this is a really nice club. I'm going to keep this club. And according to Robert Graves, it never failed to kill anyone that Theseus swung at with it, which is many people. Then he comes across a guy named Sinus, who has the nickname of Pidiocamptes, which means pine bender, because he would kill people by bending pines, like either bend them down and catapult them off the isthmus that he inhabits, or he would like bend down two pines and ties the person to both of them, and then when he lets go of the two pines, they're torn apart. And he just laughs and laughs and laughs and laughs, you know. And then Theseus, when he comes across him, just does the same to him. I'm not sure which one. I'm assuming the one with two pines, because when would Theseus ever not take the opportunity to be over the top, if you're asking me? Then he sees a woman right? And she's running away from him into the thickets. And he, of course, follows her. And he finds that she's invoking the plants, specifically the asparagus. Like, she's invoking the asparagus and begging the asparagus to hide her from this crazy murderer who just presumably ripped a man apart right in front of her. And Theseus is like, oh, don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you. I know I've murdered 2 people already, but they were bad guys. And I tell myself that I'm a good guy. And she's like, oh, okay, well, hey, so, my name is Perigone, and that was my dad that you just killed. But it's okay, because, like, I totally forgive you, because men with reverse fades are exactly my type, and I'm actually in love with you. And he's like, great. Let's bang right here in front of the asparagus. And they do! They bang right in front of the asparagus! And then she has a son by him, who he abandons because, like, father like son. Am I right? But it's cool. It's cool. It's cool. He later gives Perigone to a guy named Dionysus. Just, like, gives her as a gift. Because, you know, like, a woman you one time fucked can just be, like, given as a gift. Because women are property, in case you've forgotten. This is mythology after all. And then that son that he had with her and all of his descendants still don't eat asparagus, even to this day. So if you don't like asparagus, perhaps you're actually descended from Theseus, okay? Then he comes upon these cliffs where he encounters another one of his potential half-brothers named Sciron, who would sit on a rock at the top of the cliff, and when travelers would come by, he'd be like, ding, 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 summon by the Tolkien, wash my feet. And then when they would, like, kneel down to do what the crazy man with a foot fetish says, he would Spartan kick them over the cliff, where they were then eaten by a giant turtle. But not Theseus. No. Theseus refuses to wash his feet and then just, like, picks him up and yeets him over the cliff, where he then presumably is eaten by a giant turtle. Although some stories say that Sciron was actually a good guy. In fact, he's described as the generous prince of Megara and grandfather of Achilles, with multiple festivals named after him. But Theseus will be Theseus, you know. He then continues his murder spree to Athens, where he meets a man named Chersion, the Arcadian, who is another potential half-brother, who would challenge people to wrestle it and then squeeze them to death. But Theseus, in case you didn't know, invented wrestling, which makes no sense at all if Chersion was already wrestling people to death. But we're not supposed to think critically about Theseus. We're just supposed to, like, marvel in his greatness, okay? So this guy has been doing this thing that he doesn't realize is wrestling. And then Theseus comes and he's like, hey, that's wrestling. And Chersion is like, hell yeah, it is wrestling. Let's wrestle. And then Theseus picks up Chersion by the feet somehow. And then, like, slams him into the ground over and over and over again, where he lays dead and bloodied, right? And then, according to some myths, he then fucks his daughter, Alope. It isn't said that she has any children, but considering this is mythology and anyone who isn't cursed by Aphrodite has no fertility issues whatsoever and is always ovulating. So I'm sure there's another child of Theseus somewhere that was immediately abandoned, because there are still people to kill after all. Hey, remember that last girl that he fucked after killing her father, Perigone? Well, now he's also going to kill her grandfather, who's a guy named Polypemon, who lives just outside the road, and he would offer lodging to travelers. He had 2 beds. One was long and one was short. And he would put all of the tall people in the short bed, and then, like, all of the short people on the long bed. And then with the long people, the tall people on the short bed, he would cut off however much of the person's legs that hung over the edge, or he would, like, stretch the short person on a torture rack until they fit. And of course, Theseus killed him in the same way that he killed the others. I'm not really sure how. I'm just gonna say that he took this guy and he put him on. The guy was short, right? And he put him on the long bed and he stretches him, right? And he stretches him out so that he's tall. But then he's like, oh no, now you're too tall. And then so he puts him over to the short bed and then like cuts off all the pieces that remain. Like, I think that's what he does. And I'm going to say that that's what he does. Okay. And then he arrives in Athens where he continues to fuck up everyone's lives. But first we must be purified for all the murders he just committed. So who does he find? Well, a family member of Sinus, the pine bender, who he pine bended to death. And now that he is in Athens, he's got to look all schnazzy for whenever he meets his sometimes dad. So he gets this beautiful new robe and braids the back of his hair. Because remember, I think we're supposed to forget that he's a skullet. Reminder that this man looks like Mr. Filch. Okay? And he's making his way by the Temple of Apollo that's being built. And some builder looks at him and thinks like, wow, he is so beautiful. He must be a woman. And he asks him, why is he walking around without an escort? And then Theseus picks up an ox and throws it on the roof of the temple. Why? He continues on after this, like nothing happened. Like he didn't just pick up an ox and throw it at a man building a temple. No, he just continues on after this to go see his sometimes father Aegeus, who, remember, hit it and quit it and doesn't know that he exists. Also, remember when I mentioned Medea briefly earlier? So they ran into each other outside of Corinth, and she was like, hey, if I ever need a place for refuge, they won't extradite me for some crimes that may have been committed, I can come to Athens, right? And Aegeus is like, yes, I will protect you. Well, it turns out that Medea needed refuge in a place that won't extradite her for crimes that she committed, like right after he left. I've done 2 episodes on Medea, so I won't tell all the details here, but long story short, to get back at her husband, Jason, she kills her children, as well as his new wife, and then flees to Athens. Well, her and Aegeus are now married, and they have a son. She told him that she would give him a son, and she did. His name is Metis, okay? Well, Theseus arrives at the palace, and Aegeus has no idea who he is, but Medea recognizes him immediately. She knows who he is, and she immediately fears for her son Metis because he's supposed to be the next in line to the throne, and she worries that Aegeus's firstborn Theseus might have a better claim. So she goes to Aegeus and is like, this dude Theseus, he's no good, all right? He's either a spy or an assassin, and he cannot be here. So, dear husband, this is what I think we should do, okay? Let's invite him over to dinner, and I will poison his wine with aconite, and we'll be safe from him. Because have you heard the stories of what he did on the path, dear husband, Zeus Almighty? So they invite him to dinner, and on the menu is roast beef. And Theseus is like, oh, I got this. I will carve the roast for you all, okay? And he pulls out his sword to do so. Like, I'm sure there's a knife, like, right there. My dude, why are you so goddamn extra? But of course, this is Aegeus' sword, so it's a plot device for this myth, right? So he pulls out this plot device and is like, oh my God, that's my sword. And he's like, before I cut this roast, I will take a sip of my wine, right? And he takes a break from peacocking to take a sip of his wine. But Aegeus, who now recognizes who he is by the plot device of a sword, knocks the cup from his hand, and we were so close. We were so fucking close to being done with this man, who is the reason why there are instructions on shampoo bottles. And everyone is shocked. And then Aegeus is like, this is my son. And everyone rejoices, and there's sacrifices to the gods, and there's a party, and according to Robert Graves, songs of Theseus's glorious deeds that already outnumbered the years of his life. Are you talking about the murders? Are we singing songs about the murder? Like when he pine bended a man to death and then fucked his daughter? When he picked up a man by his feet and smashed him onto the ground? When he potentially cut off the ends of someone's legs like they do to Christian at the end of Midsommar? Spoiler, by the way. It's astounding how many people don't realize that that's one of the things that happened to him, because he was tall and the legs were not going to fit into the bear suit. That's why they were measuring his legs at the end of Midsommar. And to those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, I realize it sounds weird. Midsommar is a weird movie, and Theseus is just an overpromoted rubber bath toy. After the greatest rejoicing that Athens has apparently ever seen, Theseus decides that it's been like a day since he killed someone, and he is just bloodthirsty for Medea for trying to poison him. So he goes after her, but she evades him like a bad 1800s magician in a smoke cloud with her son. And then they flee back to Colchis, where she finds out that her uncle has usurped her father, the king. So she murders her uncle and reinstates her father to the throne and lives the rest of her life there. I won't say happily ever after, because she's met Theseus. So clearly her life is just awful. And this is another reason to hate Theseus. Like, he thinks that he can just come in and try to kill Medea. I wish Shannon told Aegeus about it and just put the aconite in his wine and then just be like, oh no, he's dead. Oh no, this is awful. Who would have done, right? Like, I wish you'd have just done that. And I realize that I sound like a hypocrite right now talking about my love for Medea, who is also a crazy serial killer, after just ranting about how awful Theseus is for all the murdering. But I have never claimed to not be a hypocrite. Okay, friends? And your expectations of me are too high. All right. Now, remember when Aegeus told Ethra that she couldn't tell anyone about the potential son because of his 50 nephews that would kill them? Well, the 50 nephews are here right now in the room with us. And I've realized that they no longer have a claim to the throne, and they revolt. But don't worry. Theseus kills all of them. How many? Is that like 60 people that he's killed by the age of 16? Like, while he's in Athens, he hears rumors of this bull that is just wreaking havoc. It has killed like hundreds of people. And Theseus has decided that this is his Heracles lion moment. Okay. He's going to kill the bull. So he finds it in Marathon, quite literally grabs the bull by its horns and drags it to Athens. So about 26.2 miles. You know, we have the historical figure of Philippides, I think is how you pronounce it, who ran that distance, and it was such a monumental feat that people now do that in honor of him, of the idea. But I bet you didn't realize that Theseus is so amazing. He did it thousands of years beforehand while dragging an angry, ferocious, man-eating, and even according to some myths, fire-breathing bull. So as if he couldn't get any worse, he's also a marathon runner. I'm just kidding. I give props to those who can run marathons. I'm cheering you on from the sidelines. I don't even like to run out of gas. So once he makes it to Athens, he sacrifices the bull on the steps of the Acropolis and finally completes a task that was supposed to be carried out years earlier by one of his sometimes cousins, Minos. But that bull is not just any bull. It is the mythological bull. And those who know exactly what I mean. And those who don't, you're going to find out on the next episode, because I need a break from talking about this man. So next time, we're going to talk about the bull and all of the bullshit that goes along with it. But I'm sorry. So thank you all for listening today. If you like what you heard and want to hear more, please consider subscribing or leaving a review or joining my Patreon. And remember, friends, history may be watching you, so don't fuck it up. And remember that Theseus looks like Mr. Largo from The Simpsons. Okay, bye.